Hello there, my name's Dr. Richard Benjamin and I'm the head of the International Slavery Museum here in Liverpool. So I'd like to welcome you to the 2021 virtual Dorothy Kuya Slavery Remembrance Lecture. Now in a short while I will introduce formally our guest speaker this year, Professor Bayyinah Bello. But before I do, a little bit about the lecture and indeed the remarkable Dorothy Kuya. So we've been holding Slave Remembrance Day events in Liverpool since 1999. But since 2014, we've renamed it in honour of Dorothy Kuya. Now, Dorothy was a great friend of the museum. She was a supporter of Slavery Remembrance Day. She was a tireless campaigner against injustice and racism and a noted African scholar. Now, Dorothy sadly passed away in 2013. And it was a great honour for the museum when Dorothy's family members gave their blessing to rename our annual lecture after their much loved Aunt Dorothy. Now Paul, Tammy, Chavez and Santi are normally present in the front row of the lecture when we're all there together in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. building, but unfortunately that's not possible at the moment. But I know they will be watching this and giving us our continued support. Now, the keynote speaker at our annual event is someone who can challenge often accepted narratives of history in a constructive and inspiring way, or someone who, like the International Slavery Museum, fights for and promotes social justice. That is why we are delighted to have Professor Bello as our 2021 speaker. Now, Professor Bello is an Afro-descendant, our historian, educator, writer and humanitarian who specialises in Haitian our story, education and linguistics. She is the founder of Fondasyon Félicité, a research centre which preserves Haitian history, named after the Empress Consort of Haiti and wife of the revolutionary leader and founder of Haiti, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Her latest work, Sheroes of the Haitian Revolution, highlights the lives of 10 women in Haitian Our Story, who played a significant role in the nation's journey to freedom. Professor Bello is based in Haiti and serves as an advisor to key eldership councils. A warm virtual welcome to Professor Bello. Thank you.
Remembrance of what? For which purpose? Remembrance is a very important activity, human activity. And people need to remember, because without memory, we do not understand the present. But then, who determines what you remember and for what purpose? And it's vital for each one of us to know what we are choosing to remember and be clear on why we are remembering it. It's particularly important for people who have gone through slavery, who are still into conditioning, still into domination. If we're not clear about what we have as a system of remembrance, it's very difficult to set what we want to happen in the future. So, here is what I say. Once one begins to question that which they have been conditioned to believe as truth, they will begin to penetrate the world of knowing. Number 2, just as questioning brings knowing, knowing builds convictions, and convictions in turn builds courage. 3, once you are in connection with courage, then you develop the ability to speak according to your own convictions. 4, to become conscious enough to pursue knowledge from within as well as from without, which will stimulate the ability to observe and learn from one's environment. Then, number 5, we should get to meditating. That means give ourselves the practice of taking in the information from without, bring it in within, and concentrate so we can decipher, and identify what we need right now for our next step, what we need to file away, what we need to save for later. Number 6, once you've done questioning, you build courage, you have convictions, you have observed, you meditate, then you are ready for action. Without those 5 previous steps, we are not ready for action. Action prepares us to perform on behalf of self and others. Then we can intentionally create needed structures for self-interest as well as in the collective best interest. We all need to do for ourselves, but simultaneously, we do need to do for our collective best interest. And it is in the collective best interest that we find the most powerful, the most fascinating, the most empowering of what we need for self. Action prepares us to perform on behalf of self and others. And the last step, once you start performing, then you get to the stage where you have a degree of knowledge of self. Remembrance of what, for which purpose? Remember, that's our subject. What do we need to remember so we can reach our purpose? A decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for us. I shall repeat it. A decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for all of our people who've gone through slavery, colonization, domination. That's a must. Colonizers and their descendants cannot participate in structuring such a program, for they have lied on maps, narratives, artistry, science, religion, everything is full of their lies. So if we want to be free from those lies, then we cannot invite the creators of these lies to participate. True restitution and retribution are obligatory and non-negotiable. So this very educational structure has to integrate those concepts of retribution and restitution into the education. A colonizing education worldwide is absolutely justice imperative for our people across our planet. Fully colonized minds cannot participate in structuring such a worldwide educational justice imperative program. Remember, the primary element to any education that we set up, justice has to be at the center of it all. What is the colonizing process? The colonizing process is a procedure through which a colonizer removes the essential cultural identity elements of a life form and replaces it with whatever it wants according to its purpose and objective in future use of the colonized life form. Example, an elephant in a circus. The elephant has naturally the strength to pull the entire circus down, but through conditioning, it now believes once the tiny little rope is tied around his neck, the pole is attached to a pole, the pole will hold it in place. And the 2-year-old can drag it anywhere. That's what happens to elephants, as huge as they are, as strong as they are. But once they are conditioned to believe this little rope can control them, then that's what happens. And they do it to plants, to animals, to people. Decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for us on our planet. What is an enslavement process? An enslavement process is an established procedure conceived by an enemy to gain or maintain power over another people. It begins with physical constraints and pains, uses fear abundantly, then proceeds to psychological, mental, and spiritual restraints. As the enslavement enters the invisible area of that people's life, the physical tools and restraining apparatus become less and less necessary. Think back a little bit. During the Euro-Christian enslaving system, when they grab us, kidnap us from Africa, they would put chains, chains on the feet, chains on the arms, chains on the neck, even something muzzles, iron stuff on our mouth. They didn't want a sound out of us. They didn't want us to be able to do anything. But then, after a few months, a few years on the plantation, then they removed those chains. They removed those metal stuff. They removed the ropes. We were free, apparently, to move back and forth. Because now, the chains had been placed in our brains. The chains had been placed invisibly in other parts of our existence. And they were sure we wouldn't go away. Most of us wouldn't budge. Even if somebody tells you to go, you wouldn't want to. As the enslavement enters the invisible area of that people's life, the physical tools and restraining apparatus become less and less necessary. Once the mind is largely occupied by thoughts, words, references, perceptions, dogmas, laws, rules, aspirations, limits established by the enemy, colonization is installed and can function on automatic for a very long time. How do we undo a colonizing process? Number one, by becoming aware that colonization lives in you. Let me repeat that. How do we undo a colonizing process? Step one, become aware that colonization lives in you. Step two, taking a firm resolve to undo it. 3, studying it well. One can only undo what you have mastered. If you don't understand how the process is established, you cannot undo the process. Number 4, applying vision, discipline, tremendous efforts and determination to search for our past ways and apply them to our present situations intelligently. Number 5, by evaluating and reevaluating your hypothesis till the perfect formulas to slaughter it are found in you. They cannot come from outside of yourself. Has to be in you. Number 6, think, speak, practice what you know to be true. Think, speak, practice what you know to be true, according to your own convictions. It cannot be no reciting. You cannot going about, the Bible says, the Quran says, that says, the Professor so-and-so says, Dr. so-and-so said. No, that is not knowledge. That is paroqueting. You know paroquet? Whatever you say, it can repeat. That's what we do. And we call it education. It's not. So, after taking care of these 6 steps, we reached at the knowledge of your divine self. Once you've gone through this process, you reach that inner divine self. And that's where you want to go. So, let's review a little bit the steps. Step 0, questioning. Questioning builds courage. What is courage? Courage is the ability to have control over your fears. It's not the absence of fear. Fear is always present. Anything you don't know makes you afraid. The dark makes you afraid. A new place, new faces brings fear. But once you realize, I'm afraid, then you can begin to do what has to be done so you can get away from your fear. If you lie to yourself, I'm not afraid of anything, the first bang, you run, you hide. No. So questioning brings us to courage. Courage enables us to speak out according to our own convictions. 4, observation. Learn from your environment. The birds, the tree, the rain, the wind, everything is speaking to you, is communicating with you. Take the time to listen. Take the time to learn. Next step, meditation. Once you spend the day out and observe so much, when you go home at night, take the time to reflect on what you've learned. Take the time to decipher what you need to understand more, what you need to practice right away, what you need to save for another day. Once you've done questioning, courage, speaking, observation, meditation, you're ready for action, not before. If you've not gone through the process, you're not ready to act. Let us recap the steps to becoming yourself. 0 is questioning. You must develop the ability to question everything you see, everything you hear, everything you say, everything you do, because you're doing a lot of things on automatic. If you don't question what you do, then you don't even know you do it. So you need to take the time to question self, question others, question the purpose, why they have you do this that way. Example, why do we say, oh, today is a black day for the country? What's a black day? I mean, all of us are black in the country, and we call the country the Black Republic, so-called with pride. And then after that, every use of the term black is negative. Something wrong with this language. Something wrong with this way of doing. Something wrong with this way of speaking. Something even more wrong with this way of thinking. That you are a black person and you thinking every time you use the term black, it's negative. That's got to change. You must correct yourself. But if you don't question yourself, you won't have the ability to correct yourself. So questioning is vital. Next, the first step. After questioning brings you to courage. If you can question what you do, say, think, you can question what you hear, what you read, what you see, then you will start to grow in courage. You will have the courage to go further. And courage enables you to identify fear in you and to decide to behave not from fear. That's what courage is. If you know you're afraid and you take the step not to be afraid, that's when courage is. Step number 2, observation. 3 rather, observation. Observation is when you go into nature. When you step out of your house, you see the sky, you see the sun, you see the birds, you see the plants. There's a whole world out there. And that entire world is a world of knowledge. So if you observe this world, then you will learn a lot. A little bird coming towards you in the morning when you go in the yard. A lizard coming towards you. Your reaction, a flower. All of it is life or different life forms, just like you. And all of it has communication. So take the time to listen. Take the time to hear. Take the time to learn from the other life forms. That's observation. And once you've spent the day observing everything that comes in contact with you, when you go home at night, take the time to meditate. That's the next step. This morning, when that little bird came towards me and it sang a certain way, then I met so-and-so. Then this and that happened. Was that bird trying to tell me to avoid this meeting? Or was it encouraging me to go to this meeting? If we go through all of this life, all of this communication, and we just forget it as soon as it's done, we are wasting a lot of knowledge rather than taking it in and making ourselves more intelligent each day. So observation is another classroom where nature is the teacher. Next step, meditation, is the classroom where your inner self is the teacher. And then you're ready to act. You're ready to pose action. Action comes in two forms. The first form of action is what you do in your own interest. Oh, I need to have some money. Then I'm going to open a store. I'm going to sell books. That is an action that I do in my own interest. And I'm clear on that. I'm going to do this to earn a living. Nothing wrong with that. That's very good. Now, at some point, I will do another form of action. I'll do what we call creation. Creation is when we look at our environment, our collectivity, and we say, there is no art gallery in our area. So I want to create an art gallery where people can come and learn different forms of arts, where people can come and admire the arts that is there. And it will be free of charge. I'm doing this for the community. I'm doing that to help the community become better acquainted with our art form. So I have my store to make money, and I have my gallery for the community. I'm not going to mix them up. If someone comes and gives some fun for the gallery, I can't take it and buy stuff for the store. No. It's two different activities. One is for collective well-being. The other one is for personal gain. And each have their role to play. So after I have action, I have creation. Once I go through the whole process, questioning, courage, speaking, observing, meditating, acting, and creating, I get 1 degree more of knowledge of self. See, all of it in the end benefit me. What I do for me, what I do for us, all of it, I benefit from it because I come to know myself better. And the most fascinating thing is the more we know ourselves, to whatever degree we know ourselves, we also know everything else around us equally. I know me to this degree, then I know this person, this animal, this plant, the moon to that degree. No knowledge of self, no knowledge of anything. I could have 100 PhDs, no knowledge of self, no knowledge of anything. Now, let's see what happens if you never question anything. No questioning, there is no way to build courage. And with no courage, we have to build something because nature will have no emptiness. So we build cowardness. If you're not building courage, you're building cowardness. If you're not building the ability to speak your own convictions, then you're building submission, repetition. If you're not building observation, you're building illusion. You just create things in your head and you think that's the way it is. You're not building meditation, you're building supplication and blame. That means in your meditation, you can find solutions to problems, to your problems. But if you never meditate, then all you have is supplication and blames. That means anything happens to me, I will blame whoever was around. It's not my fault. I got pregnant. Wasn't my fault. It was the guy who forced. Oh no, not just the guy. The person who introduced me to that guy is guilty of me being pregnant. That's what happened. You cannot assume responsibility without courage. And you never question anything. So that's where you're at. So you illusion, supplication, and blame. Then you cannot have action because you didn't question anything. So all you can build is reaction. Anything happens, you react. No plan, no program, no thoughtfulness, no determination, no intention. We just react. And 9 times out of 10, we will be the victim of our own reactions. We often see our people, there is a problem with electricity. So then we take to the street and we break up the street, make a big hole or burn stuff on the street. But who's going to live now, right? My house is here on that street. Now there's a big hole. Now every car that will come by will send the dust to my house. Every situation, everything, I will be victim of my own reaction. We must learn to question. If we go to questioning, then we will build courage, speaking, observation, meditation, action, creation, have a greater knowledge of self every time. And we will be able to determine our future better. So remember, at the core of your inner self is the divine. So if you don't question anything, you don't analyze anything, you're not in touch with your divine self. And that's where you want to go. What comes next? Okay, I've gone through this system and I've, gained a certain degree of knowledge of self. There are a few other people who have done the same process. So what do we do next? Next, structuring the teams who will systematically question all the discipline and putting forth our own perception in each field. 2, our research teams will leave no stone unturned to establish our own perception in every discipline known to humans, and then some. 3, our writing teams will make sure that the language is in harmony with our worldview and that the words carry energies and vibrations to reach at least 3, 7, 21 generations. 4, nothing is conceived for the moment. Every decision, every national endeavor is taken with the next generation's needs in mind. Let me repeat that. No government look to solve this problem now. No. If you are a leader, you are determining the life of the nation. You look at not this problem, but the problems that this problem will create. And you solve the problems that the next generation may be faced with. That's how you run a country. The public servant is trained to become selfless and better future-driven. Public servants don't think for now. They think for next year, 2 years from now, the next hurricane season, the next this, that, and the other. You see, when you have a government thinks in terms of, okay, right now there are 5 million people, but in 20 years, we'll be 7 million. So I must build schools for 7 million, not for yesterday's population. That's how we do it. The collective is given priority over the individual. Whatever is good for me is not good enough. It has to be good for us. That's what makes unity, because if it's good for all of us, then of course we all want to contribute to bringing that about. And 7, families plan for next 3 generations, and government plans for the next 7 generations minimum. So if we say that a generation is 21 years or 25 or whatever we want to establish a generation as, then when you say you are part of government, it means you're thinking 21 times 7 or 25 times 7. That's how you make plans for a nation. Not from here and there, here right now. 3 elements are vital. If we are to remember, if we are to go forward, we must have memory. But then we must know time, space, action are the 3 elements that we work in continuously. Time is the greatest actor of all our history. Whether we take time as climate or take time as duration, it is a tool that we must count with and yet have so little control over. Every element that supports actions can be called space. Our bodies are space. Our celestial bodies are space. Planets are space. Everything that lays between, above, around each is still space. Humans have some control over certain types of space, like our homes or workspace. The one tool we humans can truly control is our action. You and only you can determine what you want to do about whatever. If you are living with reactions, from reaction to reaction, then obviously you're controlled by somebody else. Because whoever is functioning with actions, that means this person is programming, planning, anticipating. And you, they put a little something, they ding, 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 and you run there. When they do ding, 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 you run here. Because you're not acting, you are reacting. And the one who is acting has control of you and will benefit from your actions, will use your energy to make themselves billionaires and forceful dominators. The one tool we humans can truly control is our action. I'm repeating. The more we develop control over our own spiritual, psychological, emotional, memorable, physical actions, the more we can determine what tomorrow will look like. Let me repeat that. The one tool we humans can control is our action. We have full control over our action. We determine what we want to do, how we want to do it, how we want to view it. The more we develop control over our own spiritual, psychological, emotional, memorable, that means that which you remember, physical actions, the more we can determine what tomorrow will look like. It is vital to recognize and be aware of our own perception of these 3 words: time, space, action. Decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for us. Naming. What is naming? I live in a part of the world called Caribbean. Did I name it? No. Did my grandfather name it? No. Did my great-grandfather name it so? No. Then what is naming? Naming is an act of authority. Did we name it ourselves? No. If no, Who did, and was it in our own best interest or theirs? If we discover that it was not named in our best interest, what must we do? Can we name it differently? Do we have the power or authority to name our own space? If not, is it truly our space? Sounds being an energy, energies are used to materialize forms from ideas. Do you think it is necessary for Caribbean peoples to decide to change the name of our space into a more productive or harmonious energy? What do you think? Well, let me repeat it. What do you think? If you're living in a space, your great-grandparents did not name it, you have no authority to change the name. Is it your space? Think about it. If we observe a lot of information we have on geography, it's nothing but lies. Okay? When we first went to school, in elementary school, we all repeated, there are 5 continents, Europe, America, blah, 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 blah. We always say Europe first, remember? They also made us repeat. A continent is a large mass of land surrounded by water. Yeah, we agree. They even give us maps. But if we were using our eyes, if we got away from conditioning, we would look at Europe and say, wait a minute. Over here, yes, it has water. But all over here, there's no water. So, I just said, continent is a large mass of land surrounded by water. But it only has water about 2 or 3 of its sides, not even 3. So obviously, geographically, not a continent. But PhDs repeated, master's degrees repeated. What's going on here? We must take the time to observe. Observe everything. Look at the maps. Look at the numbers. They tell us this continent is larger than that continent. A, is it a continent? Question. B, they say it's this size, and they say that one is that dimension. But when I look at the numbers, they claim this one is bigger, but it's not true. And I'll close this chapter with this. They claim that Australia is an island, and it measures almost 10 kilometers, 10 million kilometers square miles. They say Europe is a continent. It measures 10 million kilometers square miles. So if this one is an island and that one is a continent, something is very wrong, besides the fact that it's not surrounded by water. So it's not a large mass of land, and it's not surrounded by water. So what are they talking about? But if we're under conditioning, we don't notice. But once we start to question, observe, meditate, we will notice. And that's why it is a must that we take the time to notice, to question. What is reflection and what is change? I know our subject is remembrance. But if we don't understand a lot of the elements that we're going to remember, if we can't question what we're remembering, then what's the purpose? So, what is reflection and what is change? Reflection is the ability to ponder the known, question it, observe it, meditate on it, till we can bring some unknown out of the known. What is change? Change is that which was always unnoticed in our environment. Then once we notice it, define it, identify its functions, we can no longer function without it. Traditional societies prefer to take their time and space the changes. They prefer to take the time and space the changes, not have change one behind the other. So, so-called modern societies jump from change to change without much reflection and are forever regretting the good old days. Think on it. Our traditions, traditional people, we take the time. We never change. We don't have things like fashion. Every 6 months, something has to change. No. There has to be a good reason for something to change. Has to be question, analysis, reflection, pondering before we determine change. But these people determine, well, this has to change every 3 months. This is too old, it's 6 months. This is only a year, change that. They have you buy the long skirt in the spring, and then in the summer, you have to buy the mini skirt. So the long skirt you bought 3 months ago is no longer in fashion. So what's their purpose? Is it about you being properly covered? Or is it about making you spend everything you have in your pocket? What is the process of decolonizing oneself and becoming self again? We saw it, but we're repeating it. It's important to grasping and grabbing. Questioning, deeper and more profound questioning of all information in every discipline. Questioning enables one to develop courage. Courage empowers one to assume the responsibility of one's convictions. Speaking by expressing only that which one is convinced of, never repeating because someone else said it. So-called authorities said it so. 4, observing one's environment enables us to learn and better comprehend. 5, meditating is the ability to reflect and converse with oneself to decide proper actions with one's own counsel. Meditate. I take Bayyinah. We have a conversation, and Bayyinah is going to advise me as to the best way to deal with this. That's meditation. Taking actions based on one's conscious choices. One can also create a structure to respond to a need in the community or improve a collective situation. And finally, every time we go through this process, we acquire additional degree of knowledge of self. The greater the degrees of knowledge of self, the more we are able to resolve problems for our community. The more we are able to function harmoniously within the collective and in the collective best interest. Remember, we say and continue to repeat, decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for us, all of us who've gone through slavery, colonization, imposition, domination, being raped, having our land pillaged, having all of our wealth taken away from us, while they are playing in our heads, convincing us we are poor. Be careful. Decolonizing education is a must. Upon reflection, you see that Upon reflection, you see that change is an obligation. What is the first step to bringing about the change you want? Questioning, courage, observation, meditation, action, creation. Additional degree of knowledge of self. The more you know who you are, the less others can dominate you. The more you can foresee and shape your future. Remembrance of what? For what purpose? Yes, remembrance is vital. And to help all of you remember, in Haiti we have a song, the song of the very spirit of memory. Ibo lele, Ibo lele o, Ibo lele o, mayam magamun pajwe o, Ibo lele. Ibo lele is the spirit of memory. Ibo lele has the knowledge of everything that has happened throughout humanity in time, space, and action. So, yes, we need to remember. Remembrance is important. But what? If you are always remembering about slavery, what energy are you building and strengthening within yourself? If you want to become a free people, what energy do you need to dwell in more and more and continuously? If you claim to aspire to become free, would you choose a music, a film, a book, a museum on slavery, or a music, a play, a dance, a poem about freedom? What is the importance of Haitian artistry to our world? It is the most recent and unequivocal story about our people coming out victorious after, hold on to your seats, 312 years of fighting. I know in many books they tell you 14 years the revolution. No, I'm sorry. That is not correct. We fought from day one in 1492. We fought everywhere, in Africa, at sea, on the ocean, in the boat, arriving on what they call Saint-Domingue. We were fighting. Women, children, and men were fighting. Sometimes the fighting was intense, sometimes it took all kinds of form. For example, when a mother within that Euro-Christian slavery system decided to kill her newborn baby, what do you think she was doing? That was her way of fighting, to keep her child from entering that outrageous, ferocious system. That was her fight. When we run away, that's a fight. When we slow down the work, that was another way of fighting. We had many, many ways, but always and continuously for 312 years, we fought. We fought all the European armies, all the European forces, ferocious forces, Spanish, British, French. Then, against all odds, Haiti declared themselves independent from, listen carefully, it's in our first constitution. We declared ourselves free, sovereign, independent from all forces of the universe, not just the planet, not just the galaxy, the universe. In our imperial constitution promulgated on May 20th, 1805. Yes, then what went wrong? What went wrong in Haiti? Under the disguise of church religion, Europeans got Haitian government to sign an accord where Article 12 said that we give monopoly of public instructions to our enemies, the church. So they created a school. They created an educational content which made that the Haitians we became during the revolutionary years, that Haitian year after year, decades after decade, disappeared as you went to school. You go to school and you become other than yourself. You go to school and you lose the ability to question. You lose the courage. You lose the responsibility. You learn to recite what Voltaire said, a racist. What Molière said, a racist. What Shakespeare said, a racist. That's what we went to school. And the school transformed us into what we are not. That's what went wrong. And that is what created the Haiti you hear in the news about. So, how do we correct the situation? And I'm using Haiti very loosely. Jamaica fought, Brazil fought, Cuba fought. Everybody fought against slavery and domination. And a lot of us succeeded in many ways, and then the victories were hidden, stolen, deformed, disguised. Why? Freedom. Have we thought about what it means? Well, one of our ancestors in Ethiopia, Amunhotep, wrote a poem about freedom nearly 5,000 years ago. So you see, it's always been a subject. It's important for us to know, define, be clear on what is freedom. So we don't take, in Haiti, we say, kakapul poube. Freedom. Our first mistake was that we thought of freedom as a place rather than a continuation of a struggle. Tyranny never sleeps. Our second mistake was that we thought of freedom as a goal rather than a launching pad from which to reach our goals. Without purpose, freedom hardly matters. Remember that sentence. Without purpose, freedom hardly matters. Our third mistake was that we thought that freedom made us free. That, however, is license, not freedom at all. Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, and direction, and being in constant pursuit. Let me repeat that last phrase. Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, direction, and being in constant pursuit. So let's take an example of something that happens in all of our countries everywhere. So, some foreign government comes to the country and pick your president while you go to a charade election. Some foreign government comes and say, here's what your people need to learn. You must study this because that's what we do in our country. Here's what's important for you to know. They tell you. So they take away your ability to set up your own purpose. They tell you this is the methodology you must use. They take away your direction. And they tell us, here's how you should dress. Here's how you should speak. Here's what language you should speak. They take away your identity. So, remember that sentence. Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, direction, and being in constant pursuit. That means for as long as you live, as long as our people exist, there must be a purpose that we're going after, but a purpose that is from us, not established by foreigners. Remember, decolonizing education worldwide is a justice imperative for us. Remember that. Wow, we talk about remembrance. What do we choose to remember? Is it important for us to forever remember about how the shackles, the slavery, the who dominated us? Or is it more important for us to remember how did we fight, try to get out of the slavery? What did we do to gain whatever degree of freedom within the slavery system? Do we need to know how did we live prior to slavery colonization? What was our lifestyle? What was our culture? What was our language? How did we dress? Who determined what? That's what we need to remember. We need to clearly establish what are our own ways. What were we doing? What did we eat? Not just what did we eat, but why did we eat that and not this? Actually, the most important question of all questions is why. If you don't know the why, you don't yet know the subject. So, let me give a very quick summary of Haiti's history, since I'm using Haiti as our example. This island, positioned in the heart of Greater Antilles, sported the name Haiti in the Arawak tongue for nearly 4,000 years. So that means way before any Euro-Christian ever made it to the island was named Haiti. When Euro-Christians invaded Haiti in 1492, they committed a most atrocious, ferocious genocide against the dozen or so ethnic groups living on the island: Arawak, Siboney, Tipi, Carib, etc. Plus, we had a community of people from Akebulan who were already settled there for several centuries, possibly. By 1503, Euro-Christian genociders began to kidnap Africans to be dragged to Haiti, which they misnamed Hispaniola. The proper name of the island is Haiti, for more than 4,000 years. Our African foremothers and forefathers continued to fight for freedom. After 312 years of fighting and vanquishing Spaniards, British, and French ferocious armies under General Jean-Jacques Dessalines, we were victorious at the final battle, Battle of Vertières, on November 18, 1803. The French colony of Saint-Domingue, as well as the term impossible, were both dead. On January 1st, 1804, with General Dessalines' Declaration of Independence, a new nation arises, Haiti. On October 8, 1804, General Jean-Jacques Dessalines and his wife, Marie-Claire Heureuse Félicité Bonheur Dessalines, were crowned Jacques, Emperor First and Empress Félicité of Haiti, Empire of Freedom, as it is stated in his letterhead. On May 20th, 1805, the Imperial Constitution of Haiti, Empire of Freedom, was promulgated. In his article first, it states, "The people living on the island previously known as Saint-Domingue have convened here to establish themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, freed from all powers of the universe under the name Empire of Haiti." Hope this text offers a clearer understanding as to what we, the primordial peoples of our planet, have experienced and accomplished on the island of Haiti. Dr. Wade Nobles taught us, learn your history and history will erase the mysteries. Learn your history and it will erase the mysteries. Now, remembrance. Yes, remembering is vital. Before you could do anything, before you could know anything, you must remember. Even if we take our bodies, that tiny little sperm that goes into a body and meet this tiny microscopic egg, meet and become a life form with just a head and a tail. They remember. That's what they are going to use to construct, to build themselves. So if the mother and father were humans, then that little thing will build itself into a human according to what it remembers. If it was a bird or whatever else, it will build itself into whatever the parents were. So the memory is transferred, and that's what we build from. So remembering is vital, which is why artistry is vital to all people. Knowing yourself has a lot to do with knowing your artistry. If I cannot remember my father, my mother, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, if I have no knowledge of them, then I will be transformed into any kind of a person. And if I'm put in a place where there are only animals, then I will behave just like those animals that are around me if I grow up with that. So be careful. Just because you're acting a certain way doesn't mean that's who you are. You have to do the work. You have to shed those different skins they have dressed you with and find your true self. And the entire memory of humanity lives in you, because at the core of your being is your divine self. It knows it all. It knows everything, and it can guide you into becoming your true self. So do the effort to remember. Artistry will help, but choose the right artistry. Don't continually go to slavery, slavery, slavery. Step away. Step beyond. Look at Mansa. Look at the Mansas, the Obas, the Pharaohs. That's your artistry. Read how they live. But be careful of who wrote the narrative. You got to choose attentively, carefully. Example, for a number of years, I read certain books on Egypt, what they call Egypt. And as I read them, I read that, yeah, there were slaves in Egypt and blah, blah, blah. And then when I got into better references, and I observed that those people that were referred, that certain type of writers referred to as slave, were referred to as servants in certain cases, were referred to as assistant in other cases. And even more interesting, when I read a book that showed how, a document rather, in Egypt, there was things from all over the world. And some of the best things, the pharaohs and the royal family were not allowed to wear them. For example, silk from China was only worn by those who served the pharaohs, but not the pharaohs. In Mali, the Mansa of Mali sat on a 22-karat gold throne, but was not allowed to wear any gold jewelry. He took all the decisions as to how to make the price go up, make the price go down. And one of the things he would use is look at his servants. When the people who worked around the kingdom, when he saw everybody with lots of gold in their hair, gold on their toes, gold everywhere, he would say, price of gold is too low. So he will close down, shut down certain mines. And when he would see gold become rare as to who was wearing it, who was using it, then he would open up more mines. But he took all these decisions, but did not have the right to wear gold. Why? We must question. There is a check and balance situation being put here. You have all this authority on gold, so you're not allowed to wear it. But the other one that cannot determine anything about gold can wear all the gold they want to wear. So we have to ask why every time, so we can get into the heart of things. And on slavery, I will add this, they always write saying, oh yeah, in the Congo, there were slaves. Oh, there were slaves. When I look for what is the word for slave in their own language, the word they give, right now the word escapes me. Yes, but anyway, the word that meant, that they translated as slave, is the same word that means child. So, if those two people here, one is my child, the other one is my slave, when I present this one who's my child to anyone coming into the house, I have to say the word and hold my belly. So you know this is a child that comes from my belly. But the other person that I present to you, who's properly dressed, who is not chained, who doesn't have anything, to make the difference, I will just say the word and you will know this person, even though an adult, is a child in my house. So actually, the more we researched it, we came to understand what would happen is, if, for example, you borrowed money from someone, then you go before the law, and the law charges that, yes, you borrowed money and did not repay, then you could be charged with being 1 year or 2 years in this person's home, you lose your adult rights. That's actually what happened. You lose your rights as an adult to determine things in your life because obviously you were irresponsible, you borrowed and did not pay back. So the court will charge you with so many years of, at the end of it, the law says clearly, once you have repaid your 2 years, your 3 years at the home, no one has the right to ever refer to you having been a child in somebody's home before. So if we don't get to know our history, I mean in depth, not recite, King so-and-so did blah, 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 the battle of blah, blah, blah. No. The essence, the principles, the rules is what we need to get into. Because that's what we can use today in our present. Once we know the principles don't change. The principle of breathing has always been and always will be part of maintaining life. So if I know the principle, I can use it to maintain my life in good health. If I don't know the principle, I only know a bunch of details, I have no answers for whys, then I cannot apply the principle in my life. So, as we learn from our history, we should learn how to improve our tomorrow. My definition of history is this. History is the light that shines upon the present so you can understand why you are where you are in the condition that you're in right now. That light also hints to the best road for tomorrow. So history is not about learning the past. It's about using the light from the past to understand the present and make better choices for tomorrow. So remembering is important. Yes, remembrance is vital. But remembrance of what? For what purpose? Is where we want to go every time. If we know why we're remembering, If we know what we choose to remember, then that remembrance will lead to a better tomorrow. I thank you.